Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Emergency Planning College webinar on the Lincoln Christmas Market as a case study to show the advantages of multi-agency planning. My name's Vanessa Moore. Can I just draw your attention to the little green tab at the top of your screen? If you click on that, it will give you a drop-down menu which you can either ask a question or send a chat. Ideally, we'll pick those up at the end of the presentation, but if there are some that are relevant as we're going through and particularly need dealing with then we'll take them at that time, so please don't worry about it. Can I draw your attention as well to the Emergency Planning College information? This webinar sits under the Crowd and Public Safety faculty, but as you can see there are 3 other faculties, all of whom have the purposes of advice, education, exercising and implementation. And this, of course, is a wider role than just putting on or planning courses which are still available. To give you a background to the Lincoln Christmas Market, the first market began in 1982. It was aimed at local residents and local visitors, and it had 14 stalls and sat in the Castle Square, which is, although a small map, is the pink arrow on the top diagram of the slide. It's a small cobbled square in the Cathedral Quarter of Lincoln City. This is a tourist area, has associated tourist businesses, but it's also a residential area. Most of the residents in this area are of mature owner-occupier status, most of them probably also of a professional nature and retired. The event is organised by the City of Lincoln Council and comes from the idea of a German Christmas market, and it's because of the Lincoln twinning town being Neustadt and the Weinstrasse. The market, as I say, originally started in 1982, was held on a weekend in December. And if you look at the bottom picture of the slide, you can see the Castle Square area on a what we might call normal day, but not in the height of the tourist season. I'm sure that Christmas markets are now common to most towns and cities in the UK. However, in 1982, this was one of only a few, certainly of the German style, that were held in the UK at that time. In recent years, the market has grown. It's had some success, and it now over 4 days rather than just a weekend, opening at Thursday on midday and running Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. The market sees between 750 and 1,000 coaches over the 4 days, in excess of 10,000 cars using a park and ride facility, and both of those I'll give a bit more explanation to in further slides. There are over 300 stalls now at the event, and whilst the organisers try to make these of a reasonable quality, the stall holders will quite often say that in the first 2 days they're able to pay their bills and take profit on the second 2. There are special trains which run from all over the UK. These are charter trains, Linlithgow, Paddington, King's Cross, to name 3 locations. And there's also an Orient Express run which comes into Lincoln. Lincoln does not have a mainline railway station, and therefore there's an operation for the railways to ensure that these trains, which are longer than the normal train, are able to offload. They have to offload the first half before they can offload the second half. At Hull there is a P&O Cruises port, and these bring in people from the continent. They travel overnight, arrive at Hull, catch a coach, visit the market, and then go back to Hull and catch the night ferry again. Not surprisingly, you might think there are live TV feeds from the event, and of course this also has the added factor that if anything were to happen at the event, it would be immediately available in the media. The event now attracts approximately 200,000 people over the course of the 4 days, and it has a standardised dating, commencing the first Thursday in December and running the Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, as I've said. Because it has this attraction in terms of numbers of people, a lot of the ancillary events have grown up around it, and these are events which take place, for example, at the Old Bishop's Palace in Lincoln, next to the cathedral. And whilst it doesn't form part of the Christmas market itself, it does hold a medieval market, and it obviously has to work with the organisers of the market and they with it to ensure that all plans are working together rather than in conflict with each other, particularly in the event of an incident. The event's popularity has also brought on what might be referred to as rogue trading, and this is where you have residents and small businesses who think that they would like to take some benefit from this influx of people, and without the correct certifications or without the correct facilities, they put on food, drink or other types of entertainment. And of course all of these are not necessarily welcomed by the stallholders who have paid for the market, and they're also not necessarily welcomed by the emergency services and local authorities because of the potential for risk that these bring with them. On the right-hand side of the screen, you can see an idea of the numbers of staffing that's required for the event. It is approximately 150 stewards. You would expect there to be, and there is, dedicated medical provision. 60 police officers are engaged in the event, either on parts to do with the traffic or to do with the government's crowded places strategy, which is the types of plans that are put in place to deter or mitigate against a possible terrorism threat. The silver commanders of all of the statutory agencies and emergency services are present throughout the market, sitting so that in the event of an incident they are immediately available to respond. I've said already that it is a major operation for the railways, and in fact one of the added extras to that is that the railways often bring steam trains, which in their own right bring steam enthusiasts. So in addition to the extra people, you have people coming to look at the particular trains. Not surprisingly also, perhaps, it takes year-round planning for the event to take place, and this is year-round planning for the organisers and also for the different agencies and emergency services and contractors who form part of the event. To give you an overview of the coaching operation, because of the amount of coaches that come into Lincoln, which is a historic tourist area, they pick up and drop off on points which are in the road structure of Northgate, Church Lane and Newport, and there are 5 coach points which are lettered A to E. Coaches can book their departure times online in a pre-booking facility, which allows them to decide that the time that they want to leave, which can make the difference to a coach company between one driver or 2 drivers. When booking this, it allocates a departure point, either A, B, C, D or E, which they will then use as their arrival point. Passengers are asked by the coach company only to return to the coach point 10 minutes before the departure time. This is because of the width of the pavements, and whilst the roads are closed for the event, it is a residential area, so access still has to be available. If more passengers were present than those that are just booked on the coach slot which is due to go, then the pavements wouldn't be able to cope with these numbers, and therefore passengers would unfortunately be in the road, which would pose a risk. In order that people aren't frightened about either being late or too early for their coaches, warming points, cafes are available in the areas near to the coach points so that people can come out of the market earlier but sit and wait and not be waiting on the pavement that someone else is using for their departure time. Once the coaches have dropped off, they are taken to RAF Scampton, which is, as some might be aware, where the Red Arrows are situated, and it is otherwise a closed RAF base. They are parked up in order of their departure to make sure that they can come out at the right time slot and the right letter order. So their letter order is EDCBA. So when they're brought in, they don't have to overtake each other or reverse into point. They are just nicely drawn along. They're brought back from RAF Scampton to the area of the letters A to E by police motorcycle escort. This gets the buy-in from the coaches because they know that their drivers' hours are going to be straight, but it also has the benefit for the event organiser of knowing that they have a good control system for the amount of passengers who are waiting for coaches and for clearing those pavements ready for the next block of coaches. Obviously, there are sometimes passengers who either miss their buses or are looking for their buses. There's a tannoy system in operation to try and reunite coaches and passengers, and there's a waiting area just further off the slots for coaches who can choose to wait. In addition, the organisers also maintain a database of the coaches that are booked in, the colour of the coach, the location they're going to, and, if possible, the driver's phone number. Where possible, anybody who has missed a coach is put onto an empty seat, if there is one, in a coach going to a similar location. But it's not unknown for the organisers to use a rail warrant to assist people back to their originating location. There is other stallholder cooperation required as well. The people who attend the market are generally mature people and sometimes have health issues because of the maturity and the weather, this event being in December. There quite often has to be people from the market taken to the local hospital. Those people are put up the queue of the A&E department in order to get them back as far as is possible into the market and onto the coach for the correct departure time. Whilst this may seem unfair to local residents who are waiting in the A&E, it's the view of the NHS that if they didn't get these people back to their coaches to allow them back to their originating location, then the NHS would be responsible for giving them the transport to get back. So they take the pragmatic view that it's better to treat them and get them back on a coach than it is to use NHS transport. The park and ride operation, as you can see from these pictures, takes place on a grassed area, which is the Lincolnshire Showground. It's a large enough area so that anyone coming on a Thursday, if they were to come back on the Friday, they wouldn't get bogged down because the grassed area can move along depending on the weather. The price to park is for a car, not for the number of passengers, and it does vary for peak times. The idea behind this is that it's more easily controlling the park and ride and the number of double-decker coaches that are required for this, but it's also trying to manage the numbers of people who are in the market area at any one time. The coaches run to a terminus at the market, which is known as the Museum of Lincolnshire Life, and there is the standard park and ride coach running to that point, and also disability access vehicles go to the same location. This means that the disability access vehicle will take the person with a disability plus one carer, and the remainder of the family can safely travel on the standard park and ride, knowing that they are leaving the showground at a similar time and arriving at the same location in the market at a similar time, so they don't get split up. And the coaches run half an hour before the market opens and half an hour after it closes. At its peak, 22 double-deckers are in use, always making a necklace effect to keep running so they're not stuck at one end or the other end of the particular operation. You'll see from these three pictures the queuing system. That's a small area. The bottom left picture shows the wall of the Museum of Lincolnshire Life and shows that there is a snake-style queue to get people onto the coaches. And the top picture in wide frame shows that at least two coaches there, but at peak times 3 double-deckers will be loaded at once in order to keep the queuing system under sufficient control. The bottom right picture shows you the stewarding facility, and there are stewards there to deal with the pedestrians and put the pedestrians into the right places, and there are police officers to deal with the moving traffic. Whilst again this is a closed road area, it is a full residential area, so there has to be access available for residents and their vehicles. The Crown Court at Lincoln has some other unique problems. Sorry, not the Crown Court, the Lincoln Christmas Market. The Crown Court is one of its unique problems. But starting really at the top of this slide, the Lincoln Christmas Market takes place at the top of a steep hill. It's called Steep Hill. It won Street of the Year in 2012, and it is a cobbled steep hill leading into a cobbled square, which was the origination of the Lincoln Christmas Market, the Castle Square area. And it's seen as the focal point, and it's seen on most of the pictures relating to the market as the one that people will see and relate to. Clearly, as I've said, it's a residential area, and there are residents and businesses' normal life to continue. The Crown Court is situated inside the castle grounds and is in session, particularly on the Thursday. It tries to move out to the Magistrates' Court on the Friday, but not always available with space. And so, whilst the market is ongoing, you may well also have witnesses and defendants having to enter the market area to go to the court. There are many entrance points for the market, 5 or 6 in the area of Castle Square alone, without the other surrounding points. And as the market is free and takes place on streets, it's not very easy to know what visitor numbers you will have at the event. You can look at historical figures, looking at the number of cars using the park and ride and timesing that by 2.5 people per car. You can look at how many coaches were booked in or did arrive and did depart, and you can look at how many charter trains and how many people on those charter trains. So you can have a historical idea of the numbers on previous years, but that doesn't, as we'll see later in this presentation, doesn't always show you the numbers that you're going to get or the numbers that you have at the event. And as it takes place in December, there is the potential for hypothermia, people standing around, people not able to move because of the volume of people in the event, and also if you get into the wrong place at the wrong time and get stuck there, then there is a potential for crush. One of the parts to this is that the Lincoln Castle has one entry point and one exit point. And the entry point that people gravitate to is the one off the cobbled square, because it's the one that they see on the pictures. And that entry is 1 metre wider than the exit at the other side. It's not possible to turn that around because the public see the pictures and go immediately for the one off the castle square. So what happens is that as you enter the castle, you can get more people entering than you can get leaving at any one time, and there has to be a clear, continual knowledge of how many people are in the castle, what the space available is, so that you can control the flow in from the castle square. Hopefully this slide will give you some idea of my last point. You can see the map on the top left. The red arrows are the number of points at which you can enter and converge on the castle square, unless any of them are shut off, and that will be discussed later in the presentation. The top right picture is the castle square, that same location as we saw on the first slide, but that is how it looks on a market in today's environment as opposed to 1982's. And the bottom picture is a time-lapse picture to illustrate the ways in which people move across that castle square. The top one is looking towards the Lincoln Cathedral, and the bottom one is looking in the opposite direction towards the castle entrance. But hopefully it gives you an idea of the different ways of flows and the volume of people in that area, and therefore why there has to be a clear view of the numbers. So, how does the multi-agency planning work? There are monthly safety advisory group meetings which take place, and there is full safety information exchanged between the organisers and the different statutory agencies. Lessons are learned from debriefs of previous years, and the critical contractors for the event organiser are also invited to the Safety Advisory Group meetings. Security issues are discussed, and these may fall out of the crowded places strategy, and a tabletop exercise takes place, not only to test and validate the plans that have been put together for the market by the organisers, but also so that each of the different statutory bodies in emergency services and contractors invite to that tabletop exercise the people who are going to be working at the event. That allows for networking and meeting the different people that you would need to work with, and hopefully allows for some exchange of information before the need arises at some incident at the actual event. The right-hand side of the slide shows the different agencies and services and statutory bodies that are present at the Safety Advisory Group, and you can see at the bottom that the City of Lincoln Council, as the event organisers, bring their stewarding contractor, their medical provider and their traffic management provider to the Safety Advisory Group meetings. During the course of the event, there is a multi-agency market control, so that all of the different contractors and agencies who take part in the market are working within the same room, able to communicate easily with each other. There are dedicated CCTV pictures which are beamed into the market control, and there is continual contact between the remote market locations, such as the Park and Ride at the Lincolnshire Showground and the Coach Park at RAF Scampton, and also the ancillary events such as the Old Bishop's Palace medieval market. It's very clear during the course of the event that the event organisers are in charge, and they are given advice and support when requested, and that advice and support comes from competent and experienced members of the Safety Advisory Group teams, as well as the silver commanders for the agencies if necessary. Each day, throughout each day, there will be dedicated meetings take place, and because historically it's been possible to build up information about when there will be challenges, and that, for example, is a Saturday afternoon. The day visitors tend to leave between 3:30 in the afternoon and 5 p.m, and the evening visitors tend to arrive between 3:30 and 5 p.m, so the Park and Ride area is very busy at that time. So on a Saturday, one of the meetings will take place in good time before that peak operation, so all agencies who need to provide support to that part of the event are ready in place and any difficulties are known about in advance. So dedicated meetings throughout the day take place primed for when there are going to be known peak times. Bronze interoperability airwaves terminals are those terminals held by the police service for use by commanders of different agencies at the time of incidents. The decision has been taken at the Lincoln Christmas Market that those terminals should be out at an event, so in a pre-planned environment as opposed to an emergency environment, and they're issued to the commanders of the agencies and the organisers of the event, and this allows for the commanders or those making decisions or those involved in the decision making to be able to communicate easily on one radio system. It solves having to make 6 or 7 mobile phone calls or pass a message through 6 or 7 different types of radio nets, and these have been found to be very useful for the actual event. So in 2010 there was a significant snowfall, particularly in the Lincoln area. It made national news as having one of the worst pockets of snow in the country. Hopefully these pictures will give you an idea of the amount of snow that fell. The bottom right hand picture probably is very expressive in that as fast as the organisers put in plans to remove the snow, more came. Each night they'd got it cleared, and each morning there was more to clear. So this was another example of the multi-agency working put into good use. As a matter of course, the organisers will monitor the weather from 2 weeks before with their contractors, and this is when the build for the event commences. The organisers will continually work with contractors to adapt the work schedules and cope with the weather, bearing in mind that this is December, and there are significant recovery plans available. There's a daily information exchange takes place between the different emergency services and statutory bodies. However, in 2010, with the falls of the snow and the fact that this was still ongoing with different weather forecasts, an emergency safety advisory group was scheduled to take place on the Wednesday morning as the market was due to commence on the Thursday evening. It still remains the fact that the decision of what to do about the event was that for the event organiser, but with guidance from the Safety Advisory Group members. This whiteboard was used at that Emergency Safety Advisory Group meeting and showed all of the different aspects that needed to be considered and covered at that meeting. Instead of just the critical contractors being present, all the contractors were present at that meeting, and it was opened with them giving an update of where they were in regard to their schedule to be ready for the opening on Thursday. Any delays that they had, any staffing issues they had, foreseeable challenges in light of the weather forecasts that were available, and conditions that they could or couldn't work in at the market. There was also updates received with regard to the remote sites, the RAF Scampton and the Lincolnshire Showground, both of which were significantly covered in snow, and RAF Scampton, in fact, having been said to be unavailable for use because it's not possible to use grit on an aircraft runway, certainly not an RAF runway. The emergency services then advised the organisers and contractors about their challenges with regard to staffing issues, their core business, and anything else that they felt was relevant to the market. And this information was heard by the contractors to allow them to make any comment that was relevant based upon that before all the contractors, including the critical contractors, were then required to leave the meeting. Once they'd left, that meant that a full and frank discussion could take place between the statutory bodies, emergency services, and the event organisers as to how or what could happen with the market. Could it continue in its planned format? Could it continue in a changed format? Could it continue at all? What were the options open? And this discussion covered the risks relating to the public, the contractors, the workers, the organisers, everything that you would think to be relevant. The Council Risk Officer was present at this Safety Advisory Group meeting, and it was his view that should an incident occur which included the death of a person, the Council may well be looking towards any investigation for corporate manslaughter, and his advice to the portfolio holder was that the market had to be cancelled. It's probably no surprise to hear that the portfolio holder was of the same view, and they decided to cancel the market, and the discussion at the Safety Advisory Group then moved on to how that cancellation took place, how it was communicated to the people that needed to know, which obviously was not just the public but also the contractors and staff and stall holders. It was about the logistics of the cancellation and what level of staffing would be required, because there were parts of the UK where no snow had fallen and they would not be aware that the market had been cancelled or that there were issues within the Lincoln area. One of the big things that was learnt by a lot of people at this cancellation was that after the Safety Advisory Group finished, a press conference was called to take place approximately half an hour after the end of the Safety Advisory Group meeting. By the time that press conference took place, social media was also already reporting that the event had been cancelled, and the organisers were being contacted by stall holders about how they would get their money back. So I think the lesson there was that the old-style press conference timings don't work in the current climate with the availability of social media. So 2010 was cancelled, 2011 came along, and there was no indication that there would be any difference to the 2009 event that took place and the expectation of the 2010. There were no extra hits on websites, there were no extra bookings of any significant number. However, the numbers that came can be seen on this slide, a 22% increase in the park and ride figures. Increased coaches, increased passenger numbers on service trains as well as charter trains. Now, footfall figures showed 330,000 people over 4 days, but recognising that footfall figures do mean that some people have travelled in two directions and therefore show up twice, it still showed a figure greater than the 200,000, which was the usual number over 4 days. Crowd thinning is the wording used to allow for the Christmas market in Lincoln to slow down the flow of people into Castle Square and into the castle due to the filling area, as I spoke about earlier. It is normal for crowd thinning to be used on a Saturday afternoon, sometimes on a Friday afternoon and Friday tea time, and quite often on the early part of the Sunday lunchtime and Sunday afternoon. In the previous 28 years, this had never been required on the Thursday, which was always known as Locals Night. The fact that in 2011 crowd thinning was required on Thursday showed that the numbers, showed to all of the different members of the Safety Advisory Group that the numbers attending were greater than had been expected. There was negative publicity, there was social media comment, there was reports of it being a potential for crush because people couldn't move. It was a poor visitor experience because the visitors couldn't get to the stalls to see what the stalls were selling. Some stall holders reported low trading sales because people couldn't get to the stalls to see what they were selling. Conversely, some people reported greater numbers of sales, and obviously this had an expectation for what they would get in future years. During the course of the market, given that the emergency plans and the event management plan, the safety plans relating to this event, all revolved around the 200,000 to 250,000 people figure, meant that throughout the course of the market, multi-agency meetings were taking place more regularly, and there was significant and continued advice and guidance to the organisers throughout the event to keep people safe. And I think it's fair to say that this was, having had the cancellation in 2010, this was a point in time when all of the emergency services, members of the Safety Advisory Group and event organisers recognised the good working relationships that they had built up through these continued monthly Safety Advisory Group meetings and tabletop exercises. As a result of the heightened figures and the publicity for the 2011 market, the event organisers, City of Lincoln Council, decided to undertake a review of the market. They asked the Emergency Planning Department to chair the meeting, or the meetings, and they invited Professor Keithstill, who has a knowledge of the market, and Mrs. Elaine Bayliss to be part of the review team. Mrs. Elaine Bayliss is a retired police commander of Assistant Chief Constable rank who had been in charge of the market throughout the 1990s and early 2000s, so had a very good working knowledge of the market and had seen it grow over years. They were responsible, this group of people were responsible for interviews with the local shops, residents, business representatives, stalls, contractors, emergency services, market staff, the local hotels, all of the different trades that would have a need to be included in any form of a review. And this culminated in a 2-day workshop at which options and challenges were considered. Again, it was very clear at this workshop that the decision for what should happen would be made by the organisers, but it was where they welcomed the advice and support and guidance from the experienced emergency services and statutory bodies, but also from the people who had a vested interest in the event and for whom they put on the event. It's said by the business community that this event brings in £10.5 million to the local economy. So clearly it would be totally wrong for the organisers not to have recognised that and included the people who benefit from the event in any planning and explanations. And I think it's fair to say that this review, and particularly the two-day workshop, allowed the Safety Advisory Group members to understand the business complexities, but also allowed the business side to understand the level of safety planning that took place and the considerations that there were for this. So the proposed solutions after this market review were to increase the market footprint. Whilst the cathedral is within the market area because of its location, it's not previously been involved in the market itself. It's stood as a separate attraction. However, as a result of this review, they wish to be included, and therefore the east end of the cathedral was a part of the market rather than just the visitors passing in front of the west front of the cathedral. The lower part of Steep Hill was also brought into the market footprint, and there was to be attractions throughout this area to entertain visitors and to help them to take their time in climbing this very steep hill. Now you'll see the word compulsory there when I talk about a compulsory one-way system throughout the market footprint. Clearly it's very difficult to put a compulsory system in place, but the idea was to make it attractive for the visitors to only walk in one direction, this being less likely to cause problems for cross-queuing or cross-flowing in the busy areas of the market, and was hoped to allow for people to be able to view the stores and therefore the shops and therefore trade easier. I've referred to the castle for having one way in and one way out in the past, and that is true. And although some people refer to it as having a one-way system, it's also true to say that whilst you were in the castle you could do any direction that you wished, and it was thought that it was more appropriate now to bring in a snake system so that when you entered the castle, again all the visitors flowed in the one direction to get to the exit point. Signage was being brought in to show visitors when they entered and left the market area, and there was to be better communication between the railway station, the adjoining ancillary events and the market controllers. It has become apparent in the review of the 2011 event that communication between the railway station and the adjoining events had not been as good as it should have been, nor had it been as good as it had been in previous years. Now this might be due to the extra numbers that have attended, or it might have been other factors, but it was recognised that this communication needed to be improved. And the organisers put representatives into each of the market zone areas to deal with specific areas there and to be responsible for those specific areas, so that again the organisers maintained the clarity of the fact that they were in charge of their event in all areas. The map that is now on the screen, apologies, it's slightly blurred in terms of the writing, but the writing isn't relevant. The point of the slide is to show you the browny orange, almost looks like a bow, and that was the one-way route of the market. The two strands of the bow that you can see towards the bottom centre of the page relate to the up and the down part of the steep hill, and then the circular or oval-shaped route was the route at which you could walk the market. The turquoise points are the two-way flow to enter to and from the market. The market route in its own right was approximately 2 miles in total, which obviously I've talked about the people that attend the market being of the mature variety, possibly with health issues. This is quite a long circuit for people to take, and whilst there were shortcuts or bits that could be missed out, there was some concern shown by visitors about the amount of walking to be done. There was also concern shown from businesses on the steep hill who, having seen what they perceived to be an increased spend in the 2011 market because of the increase in numbers, now felt that as people could only travel past their premises in one direction, this would lessen their ability to trade. So they were quite unhappy with the idea of a one-way system. And again, the multi-agency planning and multi-agency working came into being, that where the organisers met with representatives of the different trading groups, the steep hill one being called the bottom of the hill group, a member of the safety advisory group of one or another agency attended with them in order to explain the safety aspects that were being considered. It was also stressed that any decision about this was that of the organisers, but the fact that the safety advisory group members were there to explain how much safety consideration was put around and what was considered helped to break down barriers and make it, albeit not agreed by the traders, certainly at least better understood. So, 2012 came along, and for some reason, or for reasons not clear, visitor numbers returned to those of the 2009-2008 order and those that were expected in the 2010 and 2011 before the influx came. This might have been down to the fact that the dates in 2012 were earlier in December. The first Thursday in December came in the first few days, and therefore this market took place before a lot of others in the country. It might have been the recession being in a different, people having more money or being able to choose what they wanted to do, or it might just have been that people, having come in 2011, they had seen the numbers that were there and didn't want to come back. 2012 also saw a reluctance of the stall holders to take up new locations. I spoke about the east end of the cathedral being used for the event for the first time. A lot of the stall holders, having come to the market for year on year, didn't want to go to this area. They perceived it as not where the public would go and perceived it as less attractive than their old locations. So there wasn't a great take-up of the new locations. The organisers were let down on some agreements also. There were places where businesses had said that they would put out cafes to help with the length of the route, or to help persuade people to continue on the route rather than try and cut through. And in the week leading up to the market, it became clear that some of these agreements weren't taking place. Quite how or why it got to that is not clear, but clearly that had an impact on the way the market route was perceived. And I've referred to the vociferous opposition from some areas of Lincoln's businesses as to their trade being decreased because people were only travelling in one direction. In 2013, in conjunction with advice and guidance from the Safety Advisory Group, the organisers have taken a decision that they will reduce the footprint. So they've gone back almost to the 2009 footprint. They've removed the permanent or compulsory one-way system and are going to introduce those measures when required throughout the event. They're aware that that may not be simplistic, but they're happy that they have a good working relationship to get advice and guidance as to when it's necessary and how to achieve it. Hopefully this presentation has shown you that multi-agency planning and multi-agency meetings with regard to events can give organisers of events the appropriate advice and guidance for trying and difficult circumstances, as well as allowing them to hold a successful event and have the minimum of inconvenience or extra workload for the emergency services. If there are any questions, then we will take them and I'll come back to you and answer them. Thank you very much. If I remind you, it's the green little tab at the top middle of your screen. If you click on that, it will let you open into Q&A or chat. Either will be suitable for that. Can I draw your attention on the slide that's there at the minute on the right-hand side, the new and upcoming courses for the Emergency Planning College. These will come up as courses and webinars, and the contact points for the college or myself on the bottom left of the screen. Please feel free to contact the college for advice and guidance, as well as to see the courses. There is more to this than just put on a course and go away. There is help to be had for most questions. Thank you very much for listening to this, and any questions, please. And so far, there are no questions coming through, so if anybody's typing, we'll give you a few minutes to get your typing. I know my typing's not that fast. Hopefully this has answered some questions for you or given you some information to work with if you have similar style events at in your particular areas. No questions coming through. I'm happy with that, so long as I've not confused people and that you're happy with that. However, I don't want to shut this down while somebody's typing, so we'll give you another couple of minutes to do some typing or to send it. Laurel, hi. Are these slides online? They are not online currently. There will be a recording of the webinar put onto the EPC website. It's probably a couple of days, so I would suggest perhaps Monday it will be available. If anybody is sending in a question, please send it even if it's half finished. If you could send it, and then we'll know that you're actually typing, because we don't want to cut anybody off halfway through your question. Alternatively, if you have any questions that don't come up here but do come up when you review this on the website, then please feel free. There's the email, the Twitter account, and the group. So, hello, Stephen. Has the Safety Advisory Group made any recommendations for physical improvements at the event footprint for example, additional mobile CCTV? Yes, there has been discussion over many years about additional mobile CCTV. One of the difficult aspects in this area is the height of the buildings. The cathedral is a high building. There are other significant high buildings in the area, and CCTV as a mobile CCTV has difficulties in transmitting its signal in these areas. And in fact, the local TV stations, there is only one particular part of the market where they can transmit from because of the size of the buildings, which conflicts with getting signals through. So, yes, there's been consideration, discussion, and you might say recommendation, but there are other factors which have not made it as simple as just to put in. And certainly it's fair to say that extra mobile CCTV or extra CCTV has not been disregarded purely through cost, which would be an obvious thought, I would suggest. Thank you, William, for your comment as well. Thank you. Ladies and gents, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for listening to this. Please feel free to contact us should you wish to do so. Steve, was consideration given to the holding the event over 9 days? Yes, there was significant consideration given to extending the amount of days that the event was held. But when research was done, what was likely to happen, one of the parts that came back, was that people would still pick and choose when they came, and because of work commitments, people would still come Saturdays and Sundays and would still select the best weather to come in. The numbers in general, the numbers of coach trips have decreased since the 1990s, and the park and ride has steadily increased, not dramatically as it did in 2011. And the information that comes from visitors, therefore, when asked as well, is that they are choosing whether they have the funds to come to the event, so they wait and don't pay for a coach trip, so they choose to come in their own car. And one of the factors in whether they come is not just about whether they've got the money to be able to come, but it's also about what the weather is like. So whilst there was consideration to extending the event, it wasn't felt at that time that that would resolve all the issues, and certainly would increase the number of costs associated, instead of it just being 4 5-day cost for the organisers to hire, as an example, mobile toilets. They're now having to hire them on 9 days, when in fact they may not recoup that, because during the weekdays perhaps the market wouldn't be well attended. So it's certainly something that has been considered. I wouldn't say that the consideration has ceased. I think it's continually looked at, but that's the feedback that was brought after the 2011. Thank you very much, folks. We will cut this one down and leave you with the slides or the ability to contact. Oh, sorry. Thanks, Stephen. It's not a problem at all. Were specific plans developed for public DFIBs at the wider remit of the event footprint car parks, in addition to the event medical plan? Lincoln, being a tourist area, perhaps like a lot of other areas, has quite a fair few public defibrillators in that area. So I'm not aware there were specific plans to put more in place. However, there are, as I say, several within the area anyway, and they form part of the event medical plan. In terms of the park and ride and the coaching operation, the park and ride has its own specific medical cover present, which does include paramedic, and I believe that there is a DFib set up down at that point, but I've personally not got the medical plan in full. So the plans cover the use of DFibs that are already there and DFibs brought in by the provider, and they're cited using historical information of where incidents have occurred and what sort of incidents they were. Hopefully, does that answer your question? Hopefully. Please, if not, come back to me or shout me. Oh, thank you. Ladies and gents, thank you very much for your time. Hopefully it's been useful. I've certainly enjoyed this, and please feel free to contact the college or come and have a look at some more courses or some more webinars. Thank you.